The 9 US states where your house could lose half its value overnight. While you're reading this sentence, thousands of American homeowners are losing sleep, and they have every reason to. Imagine waking up tomorrow to discover that your $800,000 home is now worth only $400,000. Sounds impossible. In 2008, this nightmare devastated millions of American families, and experts are screaming, "It's happening again." The United States housing market is facing one of its worst phases in decades. Housing affordability has reached record lows in 2024, creating a time bomb that's about to explode. Interest rates have skyrocketed, prices remain astronomically high, and there's a shortage of 2.2 million homes nationwide. This isn't just another market correction. This is a perfect storm brewing that could make 2008 look like a gentle breeze. What makes this crisis uniquely terrifying is the speed at which it's unfolding. Unlike previous downturns that took months to materialize, today's digital age means property values can plummet overnight. Social media amplifies panic, algorithmic trading accelerates sell-offs, and global investment flows can reverse in hours, not days. The very technology that was supposed to make markets more efficient has turned them into powder kegs. The warning signs are everywhere, yet most homeowners remain blissfully unaware. Commercial real estate losses have already exceeded $560 billion, sending shockwaves through major banks from New York to Tokyo. When commercial properties collapse, residential markets inevitably follow. The domino effect has already begun. But here's what Wall Street doesn't want you to know. The smart money has already started moving. Institutional investors are quietly liquidating properties in specific states. Foreign buyers are pulling back from certain markets. And insurance companies are refusing to cover homes in particular regions. They know something the average homeowner doesn't, that certain states are sitting on financial time bombs. The geographic concentration of risk is unprecedented. While 2008's crisis was relatively widespread, today's brewing disaster is laser-focused on specific states where multiple risk factors converge. Climate change, demographic shifts, economic vulnerabilities, and policy failures have created perfect storm conditions in exactly 10 states. If you own property in any of these states, your financial future hangs in the balance. The question isn't whether the crash will come, it's whether you'll be prepared when it does. The apocalyptic scenario. We're witnessing the convergence of three catastrophic forces that haven't aligned since the Great Depression. First, interest rates have surged from historic lows near zero to over 7% for 30-year mortgages, effectively pricing out 60% of potential homebuyers overnight. This isn't a gradual market adjustment. It's a financial earthquake that has shattered the foundation of homeownership dreams across America. Second, housing prices have reached stratospheric levels that defy all economic logic. The median home price now exceeds $400,000 nationally, representing a 300% increase from historical norms when adjusted for inflation. In many markets, families need to earn over $150,000 annually just to qualify for a basic starter home. This pricing insanity has created an artificial bubble that makes the 2008 subprime crisis look conservative. Third, America faces an unprecedented housing shortage of 2.2 million units. This scarcity has been weaponized by investors and corporations who've bought up entire neighborhoods, converting single-family homes into rental properties and artificially constraining supply. The result is a market where demand appears strong, but it's largely artificial demand created by investment speculation rather than genuine housing need. What makes this perfect storm uniquely dangerous is the speed of modern financial systems. In 2008, it took months for mortgage defaults to cascade through the banking system. Today, high-frequency trading algorithms can trigger massive sell-offs in minutes. Social media can spread panic faster than wildfire. And digital mortgage platforms can process foreclosures at unprecedented speed. The psychological factor cannot be ignored. An entire generation of millennials and Gen Z buyers have entered the market at peak prices, carrying record levels of debt and facing uncertain job prospects. When reality hits and prices begin falling, the panic selling will be swift and merciless. Unlike previous generations who viewed homes as long-term investments, today's buyers often treat real estate like stock portfolios, quick to buy and even quicker to sell when trouble appears. Banking institutions are already showing stress fractures, with commercial real estate losses mounting daily and residential mortgage defaults quietly increasing in specific geographic areas. The ignored warning signs. The financial establishment has perfected the art of sugarcoating catastrophe, but the warning signs are screaming for those who know how to look. Major banks are hemorrhaging money on commercial real estate loans, with losses already exceeding $560 billion and climbing daily. When commercial properties collapse, residential markets inevitably follow within 6 to 12 months. This pattern has repeated throughout history, yet mainstream media continues to downplay the connection. Perhaps most alarming is the quiet exodus of institutional money from residential real estate. BlackRock, Vanguard, and other mega investors who drove up prices by buying entire neighborhoods are now quietly liquidating their portfolios in specific states. They're not announcing these moves. They're executing them through shell companies and private transactions to avoid triggering market panic. When the smart money starts running, individual homeowners should pay attention. Insurance companies are providing another crystal-clear warning signal that's being largely ignored. Major insurers are refusing to write new policies or are dramatically increasing premiums in specific states and regions. State Farm, Allstate, and Farmers Insurance have already pulled back from entire markets, claiming climate risk. But industry insiders know the real reason. They're anticipating massive property value declines that would make claims unprofitable. International investment patterns reveal another disturbing trend. Chinese investors who pumped billions into U.S. real estate over the past decade have reversed course dramatically. Foreign investment in U.S. residential real estate has plummeted by 75%, with the sharpest declines in previously hot markets like California, Florida, and Texas. When foreign capital flees, domestic prices inevitably follow. Employment data tells a story that contradicts the rosy headlines. While unemployment appears low nationally, job quality has deteriorated significantly. The majority of new jobs created are part-time, gig economy positions without benefits or security. These workers cannot qualify for traditional mortgages, creating an artificial scarcity of qualified buyers that's masking underlying demand weakness. Regional banking stress is accelerating faster than regulators can respond. Small and medium-sized banks, which hold the majority of residential mortgages, are facing liquidity crises as depositors move money to larger institutions or higher-yielding investments. 3. Florida, the Sunshine State nightmare. Florida represents perhaps the most dangerous real estate bubble in American history, where fantasy pricing has created a powder keg waiting to explode. The state currently hosts 7 of the nation's 10 most expensive neighborhoods, with median home prices reaching obscene levels that would make Wall Street blush. In Miami-Dade County alone, the average home price has surged past $800,000, while the median household income remains stuck around $60,000 annually. What makes Florida uniquely vulnerable is its toxic combination of climate risk, insurance crisis, and speculative investment mania. Climate change has made the state virtually uninsurable, with major carriers like State Farm and Farmers Insurance abandoning the market entirely. Homeowners are now forced to rely on the state-backed Citizens Property Insurance, which charges premiums exceeding $10,000 annually for basic coverage. When coverage is available at all, the insurance crisis alone could trigger a mass exodus. When Hurricane Ian devastated Southwest Florida in 2022, many homeowners discovered their policies were worthless due to fine print exclusions and carrier bankruptcies. The resulting lawsuits have created a legal nightmare that's driving remaining insurers away. Without insurance, banks cannot write mortgages, creating a vicious cycle that will strangle property values. Florida's economy depends heavily on tourism and retiree migration, both of which are showing signs of severe stress. Rising costs have priced out many traditional visitors, while younger retirees are choosing more affordable states like North Carolina and Tennessee. The demographic shift is already visible in school enrollment data and retail sales figures, indicating a fundamental change in population dynamics. Perhaps most dangerously, Florida has become ground zero for speculative investment by foreign and institutional buyers. Entire neighborhoods in Miami, Tampa, and Orlando have been purchased by investment funds and converted to short-term rentals, creating artificial scarcity. When these investors inevitably rush for the exits, the selling pressure will be overwhelming. Water management issues present another existential threat rarely discussed in real estate circles. South Florida's freshwater supply is increasingly compromised by saltwater intrusion, while sea level rise threatens coastal properties with regular flooding. Infrastructure systems designed for a different climate are failing under new pressures. The state's political climate adds another layer of risk, with increasingly extreme policies driving away businesses and residents who don't align with the current ideology. California, the Golden State's tarnished dreams. California's real estate market represents a masterclass in economic delusion, where million-dollar shacks are considered bargains and basic starter homes require lottery-winning incomes. The median home price has soared past $900,000 statewide, with Silicon Valley properties routinely exceeding $2 million for modest suburban homes. This pricing insanity has created a market so disconnected from economic reality that even tech executives are questioning its sustainability. The state faces a perfect storm of challenges that make a massive correction inevitable. First, California is experiencing unprecedented population exodus, with more residents leaving than arriving for the first time in recorded history. Over 350,000 people fled the state in 2022 alone, taking their tax dollars and economic activity with them. This demographic reversal is already showing up in school closures, business relocations, and declining tax revenues. Tech industry layoffs have devastated the primary economic engine that supported California's inflated property values. Meta, Google, Amazon, and Apple have collectively eliminated over 200,000 high-paying jobs since 2022, with more cuts planned. These were precisely the workers who could afford million-dollar homes and drove demand to astronomical levels. Without tech money, California's housing market becomes a house of cards. Regulatory hostility has made construction prohibitively expensive and time-consuming, artificially constraining supply while costs skyrocket. Environmental reviews, permit processes, and labor requirements can add years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to development costs. The result is a market where supply cannot respond to demand changes, creating extreme volatility in both directions. California's tax burden represents another existential threat to property values. Combined federal, state, and local taxes can exceed 50% for successful professionals, driving wealth creation and business formation to more tax-friendly states. As high earners leave, they take their purchasing power with them, undermining demand for expensive properties. Energy costs and reliability issues present growing challenges. Rolling blackouts, soaring electricity rates, and restrictions on natural gas use make California increasingly unlivable for middle-class families. Industrial users are already relocating operations to states with reliable, affordable energy, taking jobs and economic activity with them. The homeless crisis has reached apocalyptic proportions in major cities, destroying neighborhood property values and quality of life. San Francisco and Los Angeles resemble dystopian wastelands where basic public safety cannot be guaranteed. Texas, the Lone Star. Illusion, Texas has marketed itself as the antidote to California's dysfunction, but beneath the swagger lies a real estate bubble built on shifting sand. The state's population boom, driven largely by corporate relocations and interstate migration, has pushed property values to levels that locals cannot sustain. Austin home prices have tripled in just 5 years, while Dallas and Houston have seen similar explosive growth that defies economic fundamentals. What makes Texas particularly vulnerable is its extreme dependence on energy sector volatility. When oil and gas prices surge, Texas booms spectacularly, but when energy markets inevitably correct, the state's economy crashes hard. The shale oil revolution created tremendous wealth over the past decade, but production costs remain higher than conventional sources, making the industry vulnerable to price shocks and technological disruption. Texas infrastructure was never designed to handle the current population influx, and the cracks are showing everywhere. The electrical grid famously failed during Winter Storm Uri, leaving millions without power and highlighting the state's infrastructure inadequacies. Water supplies are increasingly strained, with major cities implementing usage restrictions and developers struggling to secure adequate supplies for new projects. Property taxes in Texas are among the highest in America, often exceeding $15,000 annually for middle-class homes. Unlike income taxes, property taxes cannot be avoided and continue rising regardless of a homeowner's ability to pay. As property values have surged, tax bills have become crushing burdens that force longtime residents to sell and relocate. The state's political climate, while attractive to some businesses, has created significant risks that could trigger rapid economic changes. Extreme positions on social issues have led to boycotts and divestment by major corporations, while restrictive policies could drive away the diverse, educated workforce that powered the recent economic boom. Climate change poses existential threats that real estate markets have not yet priced in. Extreme heat events are becoming more frequent and severe, with some areas experiencing weeks of temperatures above 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Infrastructure costs to maintain livability in such conditions are astronomical and largely unfunded. Banking sector concentration in Texas commercial real estate creates systemic risks that could trigger rapid deleveraging if market conditions deteriorate. Many regional banks have heavy exposure to Texas properties that may be significantly overvalued. New York, the empire's decline. New York's real estate market teeters on the edge of catastrophic collapse, with fundamental economic shifts threatening to topple the empire that finance built. Manhattan office buildings, once the crown jewels of American real estate, now stand half empty as remote work has permanently altered business operations. Commercial real estate values have plummeted by 40% or more, with some trophy buildings selling for less than their mortgage balances. The residential market faces equally severe pressures as the exodus of high earners accelerates. Wealthy New Yorkers have discovered they can maintain their lifestyles while paying significantly lower taxes in Florida, Texas, or other states. This brain drain is hollowing out the tax base that supports the city's massive government spending, creating a vicious cycle of rising taxes and declining services that drives even more residents away. Regulatory overreach has made property ownership increasingly burdensome and expensive. Rent control laws discourage investment in rental housing, while environmental regulations make renovations prohibitively costly. The result is a deteriorating housing stock that cannot attract private investment, leading to further decline in property values and neighborhood quality. Crime rates in major New York cities have surged dramatically, particularly violent crimes that make neighborhoods unlivable for families. Retail establishments are closing in record numbers due to shoplifting and vandalism, creating urban dead zones that devastate surrounding property values. When basic safety cannot be guaranteed, property values inevitably collapse. The state's fiscal situation borders on catastrophic, with pension obligations, infrastructure needs, and social spending creating budget pressures that can only be addressed through higher taxes or service cuts. Either option drives away residents and businesses, further eroding the economic base needed to support current property values. New York's banking sector concentration creates additional systemic risks. Many regional banks have significant exposure to New York commercial and residential real estate that may prove worthless in a broader economic downturn. Bank failures could trigger rapid deleveraging and forced asset sales that devastate property markets. Infrastructure decay presents another existential threat rarely factored into real estate valuations. The subway system, bridges, tunnels, and utilities require hundreds of billions in investment just to maintain current service levels, but funding sources remain unclear as the tax base shrinks. Nevada. The casino always loses. Nevada built its modern economy on the illusion that housing prices only go up, but the desert mirage is rapidly evaporating. Las Vegas epitomizes speculative excess, where entire neighborhoods were built during boom times with no consideration for long-term sustainability. The city's population exploded during the early 2000s, crashed spectacularly in 2008, recovered briefly, and now faces another inevitable correction that could be even more severe. What makes Nevada uniquely vulnerable is its extreme economic dependence on discretionary spending through tourism and entertainment. When economic conditions tighten nationally, Nevada suffers disproportionately as consumers cancel vacations and reduce entertainment spending. The COVID-19 pandemic provided a preview of this vulnerability, with unemployment reaching 30% and property values plummeting overnight. Water scarcity represents an existential threat that real estate markets have barely begun to price in. Lake Mead has reached historically low levels, triggering federal water restrictions that will only intensify over time. As water becomes increasingly scarce and expensive, the sustainability of large population centers in the desert becomes questionable. Property values in water-stressed areas could become worthless as municipalities implement severe usage restrictions. Nevada's housing stock was largely built during speculative booms, with minimal quality standards and oversight. Many homes constructed during the 2000s boom are already showing significant structural problems, while neighborhoods built in flood-prone areas face increasing insurance costs and climate risks. The state's rapid construction timeline meant corners were cut that are now becoming expensive problems. The state's tax structure, while attractive during boom times, provides little stability during economic downturns. Nevada relies heavily on sales taxes and gaming revenues, both of which disappear rapidly when economic conditions deteriorate. This creates boom and bust cycles that make long-term planning impossible and property values highly volatile. Employment opportunities outside of tourism and construction remain limited, making the state vulnerable to economic shocks. When construction slows and tourism declines, unemployment surges rapidly with few alternative industries to absorb displaced workers. This employment volatility creates corresponding volatility in housing demand and property values. Banking sector exposure to Nevada real estate presents additional systemic risks that could amplify any market correction through forced sales and credit contractions. Arizona, the desert's false oasis. Arizona's real estate boom represents one of America's most dangerous mirages, built on unsustainable population growth and speculative investment that ignores fundamental resource constraints. Phoenix has become the fifth largest city in America, despite sitting in one of the continent's harshest deserts, creating a demographic and economic experiment that defies natural limits. Property values have surged beyond all reason, with median home prices exceeding $500,000 in markets, where average incomes cannot support such valuations. Water scarcity poses the most immediate existential threat to Arizona real estate values. The Colorado River system that supplies most of the state's water is experiencing unprecedented drought conditions, with reservoir levels at historic lows. Federal authorities have already implemented water restrictions that will intensify over time, potentially making large-scale development impossible and existing communities unsustainable. When water becomes unavailable or prohibitively expensive, property values evaporate overnight. Climate change has made Arizona increasingly unlivable during summer months, with temperatures regularly exceeding 115 degrees Fahrenheit for extended periods. Air conditioning costs have become crushing financial burdens for middle-class families, while electrical grid reliability becomes questionable during peak demand periods. Infrastructure costs to maintain habitability in such extreme conditions are astronomical and largely unfunded. The state's economy remains dangerously dependent on population growth and construction activity, creating boom and bust cycles that devastate property values. When national economic conditions deteriorate, Arizona suffers disproportionately as retiree migration slows and construction activity collapses. The 2008 experience provided a preview, with home values declining by over 60% in some markets. Speculative investment by institutional buyers has created artificial demand that masks underlying market weakness. Investment funds purchased entire neighborhoods during the recent boom, converting single-family homes to rentals and driving up prices through artificial scarcity. When these investors inevitably exit, selling pressure will overwhelm local demand and crush property values. Arizona's political climate has become increasingly extreme, potentially driving away the diverse, educated workforce needed to support a modern economy. Restrictive social policies and hostile business regulations could trigger capital flight and population exodus that would devastate real estate demand. Banking sector concentration in Arizona, real estate creates additional systemic risks through potential credit contractions and forced asset liquidations. Illinois. The Midwest collapse. Illinois represents a masterclass in how governmental dysfunction can destroy real estate values across an entire state. Chicago, once the crown jewel of the American Midwest, now resembles a dystopian wasteland where basic public safety cannot be guaranteed and municipal finances teeter on the edge of bankruptcy. Property values have already begun their inevitable decline as businesses and residents flee to more functional jurisdictions. The state's fiscal situation borders on catastrophic, with pension obligations, infrastructure needs, and social spending creating an impossible mathematical equation. Illinois owes over $200 billion in unfunded pension liabilities alone, requiring massive tax increases or service cuts that will drive away remaining taxpayers. The resulting death spiral has already begun, with population declining for consecutive years as high earners relocate to tax-friendly states. Crime rates in Chicago and other Illinois cities have reached levels that make neighborhoods uninhabitable for law-abiding families. Murder rates exceed those of many war zones, while property crimes make business operations impossible in large urban areas. Retail establishments are closing in record numbers, creating urban dead zones that devastate surrounding property values. When basic safety cannot be guaranteed, real estate becomes worthless regardless of other factors. Illinois regulatory environment actively discourages business formation and investment, creating economic stagnation that undermines property values. Environmental regulations, labor restrictions, and bureaucratic obstacles make operating costs prohibitive compared to neighboring states. Major corporations have already relocated operations to more business-friendly jurisdictions, taking jobs and economic activity with them. The state's demographic profile is rapidly deteriorating as young professionals and families leave for better opportunities elsewhere. School enrollment has declined dramatically in urban areas, while rural regions are experiencing population collapse that makes maintaining basic services impossible. These demographic shifts create downward pressure on housing demand that will accelerate over time. Banking sector exposure to Illinois real estate presents additional systemic risks, particularly as commercial properties in urban areas become increasingly worthless. Regional banks with heavy Illinois exposure could face serious difficulties that would amplify real estate market corrections through credit contractions and forced asset sales. Political corruption and governmental incompetence have created a business climate that actively repels investment and economic development. Connecticut. Elite Panic. Connecticut represents the most shocking real estate collapse story in America, where even the wealthy elite are abandoning their estates in panic. The state that once symbolized upper-class American success has become a cautionary tale of how quickly prosperity can evaporate when economic fundamentals deteriorate. Fairfield County mansions that sold for millions just years ago now sit empty on the market, with desperate sellers accepting offers far below their mortgage balances. What makes Connecticut's situation uniquely dangerous is the speed at which high-net-worth individuals are fleeing. These are not middle-class families struggling with mortgages. These are sophisticated investors and business owners who recognize unsustainable trends before they become obvious. Their exodus represents a vote of no confidence in the state's future that will be difficult to reverse. Connecticut's tax burden has reached confiscatory levels that make wealth accumulation nearly impossible. Combined federal, state, and local taxes can exceed 60% for successful professionals, creating strong incentives to relocate to tax-friendly states. Unlike middle-class families who may be trapped by employment or family obligations, wealthy individuals can easily relocate their residences and businesses to more favorable jurisdictions. The state's economy has been hollowing out for decades as financial services firms relocate operations to lower-cost regions. Stamford and Hartford, once thriving business centers, now feature empty office buildings and declining commercial real estate values. When the primary industries that supported high property values disappear, residential real estate inevitably follows. Demographic trends in Connecticut are catastrophic for long-term real estate values. The state has one of America's oldest populations, with younger families consistently leaving for better opportunities elsewhere. School enrollments have declined dramatically, while many small towns are struggling to maintain basic services as their tax bases shrink. Connecticut's infrastructure is aging rapidly and requires massive investment just to maintain current service levels. Roads, bridges, utilities, and public transportation systems need hundreds of billions in upgrades. But funding sources remain unclear as the tax base continues eroding. The psychological impact of Connecticut's decline cannot be understated. When even the wealthy are fleeing, it creates a panic mentality that accelerates the downward spiral through self-fulfilling prophecies.